back to work. The 115th Congress is sworn in.
Congratulations, you are all now members of the 115th Congress.
Lawmakers are already locked in a debate over ethics. Faith and the White House.
I'm going to look to God every day to give me the strength to do what's right.
One-on-one interview with Sean Spicer about the first 100 days in office and how his faith plays a role in his life. Terror in Turkey, a chilling selfie video of a man wanted in the Istanbul nightclub massacre. And Pope's Promise. Our Rome producer Mary Shovlin joins us here to talk about the Pope's message keeping children safe around the world. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, January 3rd, 2017. Good evening and welcome to the first edition of EWTN News Nightly with Lauren Ashburn. As anchor and managing editor, my pledge to you is to report on issues important to the practice of our Catholic faith, ask tough questions of our leaders, and highlight the work of Catholics around the world. We'll bring you in-depth reports from the White House to Capitol Hill to Rome and many countries in between. We look forward to having you along for the journey.
The House will come to order.
The 115th Congress is sworn in and Republicans are already forging ahead to deliver their agenda. Wisconsin Republican Paul Ryan was easily elected to serve again as Speaker of the House.
And that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter, so help you God.
I do.
Speaker Ryan will lead the way for the GOP to repeal Obamacare, cut taxes, and regulation. This is Ryan's first full term as Speaker after taking over for John Boehner in October of 2015. As soon as the U.S. Senate convened today, Republicans introduced legislation to repeal Obamacare. It's a precursor to a Senate debate later this week. President Obama will be on the Hill tomorrow. Now, dismantling the health care law is a top priority of President-elect Donald Trump and his GOP allies on Capitol Hill. Senate Democrats vow to hold Donald Trump to his pledge to make America great again by bringing jobs to the U.S.
I'm asking Donald Trump. You said you'd drain the swamp. Right away, your Republican colleagues on their first day are putting more alligators in the swamp. Tell them to stop. Tell them not to reverse ethics.
Chuck Schumer says Democrats will fight Trump tooth and nail when he appeals to the baser instincts that diminish America and its greatness. Republicans maintain a majority in Congress, even though their number in the Senate dropped from 54 to 52. House Republicans also lost a few members, dropping from 247 to 241. And before Congress was even sworn in, an ethics controversy erupts, sidelining some of the day's pomp and circumstance. The House GOP planned to gut the independent House Ethics Panel. Jason Calvi is at the Capitol tonight with the latest. Jason.
Lauren, controversy erupted soon after House Republicans voted last night to make major changes to the Independent Office of Congressional Ethics. Supporters say it would stop things like anonymous tips, which they say have been used in the past to attack political opponents. The full House was supposed to vote on these changes today, but that never happened.
Just minutes before the House was set to gavel in, Republicans scrapped plans to place the Office of Congressional Ethics under lawmakers' control.
I think from the standpoint of optics, the message that it would send to the American public on one of our first acts as a Republican House, I think would have been disastrous.
The about face came after a tweet from President-elect Donald Trump saying, with all that Congress has to work on, do they really have to make the weakening of the independent ethics watchdog, as unfair as it may be, their number one act and priority? Democrats seized the moment to attack the GOP.
You know, they said they were going to drain the swamp. They've just they're distributing free swimming passes in the swamp by this change in the regulations.
The Office of Congressional Ethics was set up in 2008 to investigate corruption in the House. Republicans today say the board does need reform.
What it will do is provide more transparency. Anytime you can provide more accountability and more transparency to any process that is in place, then you're going to take another step toward draining the swamp, and I am all for draining the swamp.
The process desperately needs to be reformed. but doing it on a partisan basis on the first day of Congress, of a new Congress, is a tremendous mistake. And so I'm just relieved.
We've been speaking with a handful of Republican lawmakers here at the Capitol. They all say that the Office of Congressional Ethics does need those changes, but they say it must happen on a bipartisan basis. Lauren?
Jason Calvi reporting on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Jason. And before lawmakers took their oaths of office, they prayed under a massive downpour. Members of both parties packed into a Catholic church on Capitol Hill for an interfaith prayer service. The prayers included singing Amazing Grace and a short reflection by the House chaplain, Jesuit Father Patrick Conroy. Faith is at the center of one congressman's life on Capitol Hill. Representative Chris Smith, a Republican from New Jersey who has served in Congress since 1981, joins us now. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Lauren. So good to be back.
You have been a relentless pro-life advocate in Congress for more than 30 years. With the GOP in charge, are we going to see pro-life legislation passed and signed by a Republican president?
I think it's very likely. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that Planned Parenthood, an organization that has killed over 7 million unborn babies, is defunded to the greatest extent possible. We're hoping to make some serious changes in our law as it relates to conscience rights. Unfortunately, the last 8 years has been an all-out assault on the Catholic Church and other people of faith to coerce them into providing abortion, as well as other things to which they are not in favor of. So there has been an assault on the right of conscience, and I know for many in Congress, including our Speaker, restoration of conscience rights and enforcement of conscience rights is of the highest priority.
Representative, do you think it's going to be possible to repeal Obamacare? The concern of supporters is that it will cause an interruption in coverage for those who have it now.
Well, just like Obamacare was phased in over the course of several years, it's not likely that Obamacare will be eliminated overnight. But it is an egregiously flawed model. I know that I'm in Obamacare now. I've been forced into it, even though the president said if I liked my health care program, I could keep it. Well, I lost it, as did my wife. And we're paying double the premium, triple the other parts like co-payments. So it has been a disaster for Americans across the country. We need to repeal it, and then we need to work on replacing it with a model that will provide affordable care, because right now it is unaffordable, and it's really it has hurt businesses in their hiring. So it's been a disaster, and it's only been in effect a few years. You know, they had a long lead time, and that was some accounting gimmicks that they employed in order to make it look like it didn't cost as much. But when it finally kicked in, it has been an unmitigated disaster, and it needs to be repealed.
Before we go, I want to quickly ask you about your Christmas. You spent some time in Iraq. How did you find the plight of Christians there?
I did. Well, I went and I met with the Bishop Borda and members of the Christian community. There were about 70,000 Christians in Erbil, Iraq, and it was a wonderful trip. But frankly, a sobering trip, because they're not getting the aid that they need to get from the United States government. I have a bill in that would do that. We're asking the Trump administration to do what Obama refused to do, and that is to provide help and assistance to these Christians. I went to the camp with the bishop. Wonderful, wonderful people, but they need our help, and the Knights of Columbus
desperately do. You're right.
Are the ones who really have mobilized all of us.
Right. Well, while you were talking, we were able to see your grandson there in the background. I know this is a very exciting day for you and for him and for all of your family.
It sure is, Lauren.
So we'll let you get back to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on, and God bless.
God bless you. President-elect Donald Trump names lawyer Robert Lighthizer as U.S. Trade Representative. Lighthizer served as Deputy U.S. Trade Representative under President Reagan. He'll play a key role in Trump's trade agenda. He's an experienced trade official who has questioned the conservative movement's commitment to free trade. Ford Motor Company is canceling plans to build a $1.6 billion factory in Mexico. Instead, investing $700 million and 700 new jobs in a Michigan plant. Donald Trump has criticized Ford's plans to invest outside America. And from Ford to General Motors, the president-elect is threatening to slap a tax on GM for making cars in Mexico. Trump was talking about the company's cruise vehicle when he tweeted, "Make in the USA or pay big border tax." GM responded saying only a small number of cruise vehicles are made in Mexico that are sold in the United States. As Trump prepares to take office, what role will faith play in his administration? Joining us today is Sean Spicer, incoming White House Communications Director and Press Secretary. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Lauren.
Let's start with the HHS mandate. I know that you are Catholic, and this is of interest to our Catholic viewers. It requires employers to cover birth control and abortion-inducing drugs. How is the Trump administration going to work to repeal this mandate?
Well, I think after we get in office, we're going to be looking at all of these different executive orders that have occurred over the last 8 years and other things, and go through them methodically and make sure that we repeal the ones that that have not had the proper action, and then work with Congress on the legislative fronts. But the president's been very clear on his stance on life, and we're going to make sure that we are a very pro-life administration.
The discussions of faith have not been embraced over the years in the public square. Both you and Kellyanne Conway hold high-level positions in the White House, and you're both very open about your Catholic faith. Do you feel that the Trump presidency marks a turning point, possibly, for Catholics?
Well, I don't think it's just about Catholics. The majority of Catholics voted for this president. The majority of born-agains voted for this president. And the majority of people who attend Mass or other services weekly voted for this president because I think he understands that people of faith have felt kind of pushed aside over the last 10 or so years, that they're not, that we have to choose between our faith and serving in government, if you will, or expressing ourselves in the public square. And I don't think our framers ever intended that to be the case. So I think it's not just a question for Catholics, but it's a question for all Christians and Jews and Muslims and anybody who feels strongly about their faith, that they have the ability to express it, and that it's not a binary choice, that if you want to express your religion or celebrate it, that the public square isn't where you have to not talk about it. We should enjoy celebrating all religions and not have to, look at it the other way around.
Will key Catholic moral issues, as well as other religions and issues important to them, be taken into consideration during these policy discussions?
Well, look, I think when your background shapes how you think of things. So, coming from a family of faith, from not just me, and you mentioned Kellyanne, but a lot of others in the campaign who have faith backgrounds, but of different religions, I think that helps shape how you make decisions and guide your priorities. So it's definitely going to be something. You've got Reince Priebus, who's a Greek Orthodox. There are people as chief of staff and others. Steve Bannon's a Catholic. There's a lot of folks going to the senior ranks of this administration who are very proud of their faith and their religion, and it's going to help guide us do the right thing for this country.
I've sat in the White House press briefing room and peppered questions at the press secretary. He's often in the firing line. You're going to have to answer tough questions on a day-to-day issue. How is your faith going to help guide you?
Well, I'm going to look to God every day to give me the strength to do what's right, and that's all you can ask for, is to get up and say, can I do the right thing, help guide me, and ask him for strength. And that's what I'll do every day. I'm humbled to have this position. It's an honor. We don't know what God's plan is at any time, but we know that he has one for each of us. And I'm honored that he's chosen me to be part of this administration and serve this nation, hopefully to make it a better place.
And Sean Spicer, we thank you so much for your time. We look forward to seeing you on EWTN News Nightly with Lauren Ashburn in the future. Sean Spicer, incoming White House Communications Director and Press Secretary.
Thank you, Lauren.
Donald Trump's campaign rival, Hillary Clinton, will be attending the inauguration with her husband, former President Bill Clinton. As a former president, the First Lady and the couple faced the difficult decision of whether or not to attend the ceremony. The announcement came shortly after former President George W. Bush's office says he would attend with former First Lady Laura Bush. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. President-elect Donald Trump is putting North Korea on notice. He vows to stop them from building a nuclear weapon capable of hitting U.S. territory. Wyatt Goolsbee joins us from the White House with more on the president-elect's clear warning.
Lauren, Donald Trump's top aide, Kellyanne Conway, says the president-elect is not making policy at the moment. He's not the president yet, but following a new threat, Conway says Trump will stand between North Korea and its missile capabilities. North Korea is ringing in the new year, boasting they have nukes that can reach parts of the U.S. In his annual address on January 1st, leader Kim Jong-un promised to test launch an intercontinental ballistic missile. Donald Trump is responding, tweeting, North Korea just stated that it is in the final stages of developing a nuclear weapon capable of reaching parts of the U.S. It won't happen. Foreign policy experts say it's a problem he's inheriting after years of inaction under President Obama.
And they likely already have nuclear warheads for their medium-range missile, which puts South Korea and Japan under a nuclear threat today. It's not theoretical, it's today.
Bruce Klingner, a former CIA and defense official, warns that the communist nation may have enough fuel for about 20 nuclear bombs. That poses a direct threat to U.S. territories like Guam, as well as U.S. allies like Japan and South Korea.
A very key thing that Mr. Trump must do is affirm our commitment, that we stand shoulder to shoulder with our allies.
Trump is also criticizing China, North Korea's most important ally, for not doing more to discourage its nuclear weapons program. China is defending its stance.
China's position has been clear and consistent. We insist on denuclearizing the peninsula, maintaining its peace and stability, and resolving the issue through dialogue and consultations.
This is nothing new for North Korea, which is governed by a third-generation dictator and suspicious of outsiders. In 2009, a newly inaugurated Barack Obama was greeted with a nuclear test and a long-range rocket launch. Not everyone agrees with Donald Trump's use of Twitter to call out countries like North Korea. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says some of these diplomatic issues are so complex, quote, we cannot tweet them away. Lauren?
Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the White House. Thank you, Wyatt. Investigators in Turkey search for the man accused of gunning down 39 people at a nightclub on Sunday. Turkish state media released new footage showing the suspect walking around Istanbul's most famous square. It's not clear if the selfie video was filmed before or after the massacre. ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack. In 2016, nearly 30 Catholic pastoral workers were killed worldwide. The number one place for the most deaths, the Americas. Vatican news agency says 12 workers, including 9 priests and 3 religious sisters, were killed in the Americas, which includes Mexico. 8 were killed in Africa, 7 in Asia, and 1 in Europe. A majority of the workers were killed in attempted robberies. Coming up, a packed agenda for lawmakers. We'll talk about top priorities for the 115th Congress with Trump advisor Matt Schlapp. Plus, repealing Obamacare. A battle is brewing on Capitol Hill as the president fights for his legacy. A duel tomorrow on Capitol Hill over Obamacare. Vice President-elect Mike Pence is set to meet with House Republicans to talk about repealing it. At the same time, President Obama will meet with Democrats to form a plan to keep Republicans from dismantling the law. President Obama will deliver his farewell speech a week from today. The White House says the president will travel to his home in Chicago to say goodbye. The speech is a tradition stretching back to George Washington. And as President Obama exits, the new Congress enters with a long list of priorities. What will bubble to the top? Joining us is Matt Schlapp, former advisor to George W. Bush. Welcome back to the program.
Great to be here, Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you. President Obama has issued several last-minute regulations, including one that bans and bars states from withholding federal money from Planned Parenthood. How hard is it going to be for Donald Trump to reverse these decisions?
It's a real case-by-case situation, but in most cases, the President Obama's agenda can simply be erased. He said he had a pen and a phone. Well, guess what? We have an eraser and a delete button. And a lot of his agenda will be gone within the first week of the Trump presidency.
Congressional Republicans and Donald Trump both campaigned on repealing Obamacare. Do you think this is going to be easier said than done? I mean, what do you see as potential roadblocks to this?
Look, the first thing is Obamacare can't be completely repealed. Obamacare is about the way in which we get our health care in this health insurance for health care in this country. And there's a certain amount of that that's just going to be the way the system is. The more obnoxious parts of Obamacare, the questions of religious freedom, and those questions that are actually making our health care delivery worse and more expensive, will be repealed, and over the course of the next 2 years, we'll have a better idea for what that replacement looks like.
We heard from Representative Chris Smith earlier in the program who talked about this sort of phase-out approach. But what will happen if there isn't a full repeal at the end of this? I mean, is there going to be, what did George W. Bush do when he jumped out of the plane? Mission accomplished?
Yeah.
You know, is there going to be a mission accomplished and then a backlash?
Basically, you can't repeal all of it because there are aspects about the Medicaid system and the Medicare system that will be consistent in the additional piece of legislation that's passed. But the parts that the American people are the most concerned about, the idea that you couldn't keep your doctor, the idea that you have these plans that include everything, including things that are morally repugnant in each of these plans, that you don't get to pick a plan that's right for you and your family. Those are the types of things that will be repealed, and giving states more flexibility and giving the consumer more choice. Those Republican free market ideals will be put back into health care.
Democrats say they're targeting 8 of Trump's cabinet nominees. Are they overplaying their hand?
They're going to go after every cabinet nominee and every sub-cabinet nominee they possibly can. They hope to nick a few, and they hope to beat a few. And for the Trump administration, this is a wake-up call. They're going to come after them with everything they've got, and it starts with weakening his broader team, and he's got to be ready for the fight.
Trump and congressional Republicans don't agree on everything, as we saw this morning with Speaker Ryan over the ethics controversy. What do you think are the most likely areas of tension?
I think it's hard to sneak things through anymore in any way. And I think this ethics thing, it wasn't going to be snuck through. That's not fair, but it certainly was done kind of at the last minute. And I think what you see is with President Trump is he's going to have opinions. And guess what he's going to do with those opinions? He's going to express them.
He's going to tweet them.
And he might very well tweet them. And they have to deal with the consequences. But let me just tell you, it's okay for Republicans on the Hill to disagree with a Republican president.
Healthy conflict.
That's right. Too much kumbaya is not actually a good
for
thing.
Anybody.
We have a separation of powers, and that's the way the constitutional system is.
Very good. Matt Schlapp, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Former George W. Bush and Trump Catholic Advisory Board member. Up next, Rome producer Mary Shovlin is here in studio. She'll talk about the Pope's call for complete commitment to protect our children. Pope Francis encourages bishops to have a zero-tolerance policy for any form of child abuse. The pontiff wrote a letter to bishops worldwide on December 28. That's the Feast of the Holy Innocents. That was made public by the Vatican on Monday. Francis highlights the issues of child labor, malnutrition, sexual abuse, and asks for forgiveness for abuse committed by Catholic priests. Our Rome producer, Mary Shovlin, is in the house. She's here in studio with us today to talk more about this. Wow, it's great to have you across the way here.
It's so great to be here, Laura, finally.
I know. Well, we love your reports from Rome.
Thank you.
Pope Francis established an office in the Vatican for the protection of minors. He's met with abuse victims throughout his pontificate. What stands out to you from this letter? You've read this letter.
Exactly. Well, as you mentioned, he's met with the victims. He's established this office. He's made a lot of innovations in terms of the church's response to sexual abuse. But what stood out on this one was him explaining maybe what the sin actually is involved here besides the obvious one. He says, first of all, there's the sin of what happened, first of all, that devastation of a child's innocence. But he also said the sin of neglect, the sin of the abuse of power by the clergy. This is the sin of not responding in an appropriate way to the allegations when they were made. And so I like that he delineated what exactly the sin, all the sins were.
And just said it wasn't just a blanket, don't do this.
Exactly.
It was just, this is how it breaks down.
Exactly.
That is very interesting. He asked them to renew their commitment to zero tolerance for sexual abuse. What does that mean for a bishop who's in charge of a diocese, for example?
Well, exactly. So you have to figure out there has to be a response. And in the past, the church and the courts have had to investigate what did a bishop know and when did he know it? And is he guilty of neglect in responding to these cases? So fortunately for in the U.S., for example, the USCCB, the Conference of Catholic Bishops, published guidelines in 2002 of how to respond, how to cooperate with the local authorities. And so they're given this national standard, and then it's up to the local bishops to implement that at the local level. But whether or not to implement it is not an option. The response must come, and if they will be judged on how they responded, and that's important to know.
Wonderful. Mary Shovlin, our Rome producer, you'll be back with us right here in studio tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining us. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. We invite you to join us online and share your thoughts and opinions about the newscast. I can be reached on my Facebook page and on Twitter at Lauren Ashburn. I'll see you again tomorrow night. Good night, and God bless.